Hello and welcome to China Dispatches, the official podcast of the European Union Chamber of Commerce in China that shares on-the-ground insights from business leaders and experts on doing business in China. I'm your host, Adam Dunnett. In today's episode, we look at small and medium-sized enterprises, their business environment, the challenges and opportunities they face, along with recommendations on how to be successful. Our guest speakers today are Renzo Isler, Director of the EU SME Centre, Helika Jurgenson, Project Manager of the China IP SME Helpdesk, and Ester Canada Amela, the Advocacy Manager of the EU SME Centre. Part 1, Sentiment in China. Maybe I can start with you, Renzo, and you can tell us a little bit about the EU SME Centre.
Thank you, Adam. SME Centre is a special project which is financed by the European Commission. And the purpose of the SME Centre is mostly to help and to support small, medium enterprises to enter China. This project has been running since 2010, and right now we are at phase 3 level. The phase 4 will actually start from July 1st of this year and will continue until 2025. So it is a project that is here to stay.
And practically speaking, how do you help SMEs?
Well, we give them knowledge information, we give them reports, we give them advocacy support. We also give them proper connectivity in Europe through PSOs and other support organizations.
That's very encouraging and promising. So is it possible for SMEs, for European SMEs, to actually be successful in such a large, daunting market like China?
Well, absolutely it is. We have many cases of European SMEs that are currently doing business successfully, even profitable, returning profits back to Europe through dividends, etc. So the possibilities are there, but of course there are also challenges.
Okay, well, tell us about those challenges then.
Well, challenges are what I would divide them into two parts. We'll call the old challenges and the new challenges. The old challenges are the one that we have been running all along, even before COVID. And this is the huge difference, the business culture difference, the adequate market information that you need to have in order to enter China, regulatory barriers, and then later on, I think that Helika will also touch upon this. Uneven playing field that we have been discussing on and for a long time. And the crucial fact also poor financing, the difficulty in having proper financing to run the business. The new challenges, of course, is dictated by COVID. And I'm not talking about geopolitical changes now recently, but the COVID has made quite a big impact. And it has impacted almost every European entity or every European economy. The goods and exports of sales have dropped, and we have seen some challenges in that particular area. And also the other challenge has been caused by COVID, the travel, the difficulty by foreign managers, European managers to return back to China, to return back to their office or businesses or their own enterprises themselves. So these have been challenges, however, that have prompted, again, as in many cases, you find opportunities.
Yes.
So the challenges are moving then us into a different world. We can go into a cyber world.
Yes.
Where we don't travel as much as before. We are, in fact, much more into the online communication. Webinars are becoming sort of the common denominators. And the introduction of innovative and trending way of life, moving to a twin digital and green transition. So embracing artificial intelligence, using AR and VR technology, exploring green financing.
Yeah.
Plus, many more technologically advanced tools are giving us a conviction that these current challenges will, in fact, generate greater opportunities for the yet unborn generation.
Okay. So do I understand correctly then that EU SMEs can access this information from the SME Centre no matter where they are then?
Absolutely, they can. We are, in fact, able to provide such information via our system, via our internet website. they can have easily access. You just need to register it. So
okay.
There are plenty of options that are available now on the market for any EU SME that is interested to learn more about China, to enter China, or to just simply get better knowledge.
Excellent. Well, we'll certainly put your website and contact information in the notes later. You mentioned Helika on some of the, perhaps being able to comment on some of the challenges. You run the Chamber's IP Helpdesk. Can you explain to us what that is and what you do?
Thank you, Adam. China IP SME Helpdesk is a European-funded project that assists European small and medium-sized enterprises with intellectual property rights issues when they are entering China market. Now, the IP SME Helpdesk offers a variety of services in order to assist SMEs. We do so mainly by operating a dedicated inquiry helpline, by offering trainings and seminars and workshops, and also populate our website with resources and materials that SMEs might need to learn more about intellectual property rights in China, to understand the environment in China, and to gain more knowledge about IP in China.
Okay, let's give our listeners the benefit of the doubt and start by assuming that they know nothing about intellectual property rights. How would you address somebody who's hearing this buzzword perhaps for the first time or isn't so familiar with what this is all about?
Well, intellectual property refers to the creations of the mind.
Okay.
For example, those could be inventions. They could be literary or artistic works, or they could be also symbols and images, what people or companies come up with. Now, those creations of mind, they're intangible assets that usually have great value for companies. For example, patents, trademarks, copyrights, they all are part of intellectual property.
Patents, trademarks, and copyrights. I know all of these terms. I actually do know what each one stands for, but I'm going to ask you to explain each and every single one of them, if you don't mind, just briefly.
Of course. So patents protect inventions. Copyrights protect the expressions of ideas. They protect literary works or artistic works, photographs, for example, but also software.
Yes.
In China and in many other jurisdictions, software is also protected under copyright.
Yeah.
And trademarks, they are signs or symbols that help to distinguish the products of one company, those of other companies.
Wow, I think that could be very overwhelming for some of our SMEs, but I know how important it is, hence the existence of this project. I'm going to come back to you later on that, on how companies can practically make use of this information and why they need to. But staying with our first part with the concept of the sort of business sentiment in China, I want to move now to our advocacy manager at the EU SME Centre, Ester. The centre has an advocacy element to it. What is meant by that? Again, advocacy might not be intuitively recognized by all of our listeners as well. What's the advocacy in SMEs? What do they have to do with each other?
So basically, in a nutshell, what we do in our advocacy work at the EU SME Centre is to make sure that the voices of European SMEs are heard, both in the context of Chinese policymaking as well as with our European institutional stakeholders. The way we do this is through a cycle. So we start because, as you know, China is a very dynamic market. There are a lot of changes, and our SMEs need to be informed of what is going on. So we start by disseminating information on the newest laws, regulations, policies that could affect SMEs. For instance, the 14-year plan on SMEs, or new regulations on e-commerce or on IPR. Then we consolidate the feedback that we get from our SMEs on these laws, regulations, the challenges that they experience in the Chinese market. And we put all together in a position paper that we present after that to European and Chinese institutional and business stakeholders. And that will be, I would say, the last part of the cycle, dissemination and outreach. Yes, that would be, I would say, the gist of our work here.
So, I mean, that's great that all this information can be generated and shared. What do you see as the impact of it? How have SMEs benefited from this, again, in practice, in real terms?
Well, of course, for an SME who has limited resources and a lot of things to worry about, perhaps advocacy is not the first thing that they will go to. It will not be their first priority. But we need to think that advocacy is extremely important because we need to make sure that governments are aware of the issues, of the impact of their regulations, their laws on SMEs. Just to give you an example, SMEs in China and, to be honest, in Europe, have been grappling for years with the issue of late payments. One of the areas where we have been able to contribute through the EU SME Centre is we have been raising this issue to the Chinese government as well as the European government. And through the bilateral EU-China SME dialogue, there have been best practices exchanged because the EU, for instance, has a late payments directive. And a couple of years ago, China finally developed a regulation that would protect SMEs from late payments. So that's an example.
No, that's great. So, Renzo, with all the services that the EU SME Centre provides to help SMEs, how is this different from consulting companies that also provide what sounds like, similar services in terms of market reports and business development and all that?
No, actually, this is not the case. We're not competing with professional consulting companies. What we do, we're just like the first line of information. That's what we say. It's kind of, you scratch the surface and you get, let's say, 1 meter below surface water. But that's not enough. Of course, then once you know where you want to go, you have a pretty good idea of your interest, if you're capable, blah, 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 then you have to get into the doing of things.
Yeah.
And that's where we don't get involved. Because we're not brokers. We're not professional consultants. We don't get money from this thing. Okay. We provide services for free to give us a first line of information sharing for interested parties.
So rather than competing them, you almost help them generate more business because you bring companies in that are prepared and might go a step further.
You can say we give the first filter, and then consulting companies receive information or requests from companies or institutions that know better what they want. So for them, it's actually a better professional activity that they can complement and support and get a better result in the end. Okay.
And can consulting firms work with the SME Centre?
Well, they can, in theory, they can work with us, but it's not really what we are aiming at. This is not a scope that the European Commission gives us this objective to deal with business, with SME, with the supporting organizations and all that. So we don't. Although sometimes we share information, we get information from them, etc., etc. But that's not the scope of our business.
But I'm just thinking in terms of some of the reports that you generate and speakers that you have at your events. I've seen some of the other consultants out there.
Well, yes, of course. In order to produce reports, in order to execute things, then we may need the expertise of some people that are in the market.
Okay.
These people could be professors from university, could be actually professionals that know exactly that particular areas, or could be consultants that are specialized in domain. But most of the time, these are people specialized in that particular industry that we filed the report for. I mentioned before the pork or the cosmetics.
Yes.
There you consult with people that are informed, knowledgeable about those specific issues.
And how many reports do you have available?
Well, it's over 200 reports available. Some of them maybe bit to be updated, but they're always full of information and knowledge and understanding in all different business areas.
Okay. Esther, I saw you wanted to say something there.
Yeah, maybe just to complement what Renzo was mentioning. First of all, I would like to highlight that a lot of the experts that we work with are SMEs themselves. So in that sense, the SME Center can also operate as a visibility platform for these companies, which are actually, in many cases, real experts in very specific sectors and areas. So that would be the first one. And the second one would be that indeed, so as Renzo mentioned, we do work together with consultancies on reports and on other events and seminars. But also, aside from the first line of advice that we provide, we have a service provider database to which SMEs can refer once they have gotten this initial feedback from us. So, if they need more information, they can browse through these database, and then they can select the provider that best fits their needs. And again, a lot of these providers are SMEs.
And if you're a provider helping SMEs, you can list yourself on this database?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Okay, let's move to our second part of the podcast. I'm going to come back to Renzo, and as the title says, recommendations. What are your recommendations for European SMEs who are hearing news about China being this big growth market, despite all the challenges that you mentioned earlier? What would be your recommendations for them today in 2022?
Well, the most important one, I would say, don't get scared. There is a lot of, especially if you're in Europe, of course, and you're sitting there and looking at China and saying you're doubting, should I not? A lot of information now is detached from the, let's say, on-site information understanding of China because of the travel restrictions and everything. So there is a little bit less on-the-ground understanding of the China reality. The second recommendation would be do your homework. So you have to be prepared. Don't come here just shooting in the dark and getting into the hands of who knows whom that promises gold mines or anything like that, because this is not true. Coming to China requires a proper understanding of the country, an understanding of the business, and who and what, and regulations, etc., etc. So, and in this, the EU SME Centre is proactively promoting information. So we have one knowledge section which shares reports on different sectors of business. Like recently, we shared one on pork, for example. The peculiarities of importing or exporting pork products. Another one on cosmetics. There have been new regulations about how you have to deal with cosmetics. Another one, pet food. So you see that we are having an array of different topics that we challenge and we promote by filing reports. And all these are available on our website, as I said before, registered, and you have free access of all this information. So again, perhaps I should open a parenthesis here. All the services we provide are free of charge.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's a freebie, as you would say.
And how many SMEs have you served to date?
Oh God, that is a good, challenging question because we're talking about in 4-digit numbers so far. But the point is that sometimes we don't even know because we transit via BSOs. So
BSOs?
There's a business service organizations. So these are entities in Europe that have in their scope a lot of sector SMEs that refer to them and so on. So the capacity to inform is within our scope of business. That's what we are being given the task by the European Commission to inform as much as possible. The other, then we have another section which is called the advice section. That is that live thing. You can interject with our experts.
Yes.
And one box that we have is Ask the Expert box. That's where you can put your question, and then you will get within maximum 48, let's say 72 hours, we give you a response. Normally, written forms that to be called, and then we call, then we have a calls, and then direct responses. And the other important tool that we developed is a self-diagnosis tool. This is an interactive tool. It is a series of questions that you would tick boxes and then take you to the next level, to the next level, the next level. The scope of this is for you to do your self-evaluation. Yeah. So you can do it yourself. You don't need to ask anyone.
This is all online, is it?
It's all online. It is very easy, very user-friendly. By the time you finish this, it doesn't take probably more than 10 minutes to do the whole process. Once you finish that, you get to the score that you get. Okay. But it's not just we tell you you're good or you're not good. I give you 10 mark or 8 mark or 5. We give you the inputs. We give you the written indication of what you're lacking in, what you should read, which are the indications that you should follow, etc., etc. So it is a full feedback which is automatically generated by an intelligent system that we have been building up over the time. So what we transformed is we translated the knowledge that we have into the system, and each one of them should really take good advantage of this, because it's a full value of knowledge that is in that. I would strongly recommend any small, medium enterprise or institutions in Europe that are interested about China, take that challenge. Take that exercise. It's worth it.
I'm convinced. It sounds like a lot of fun. I'd like to try it myself.
Good.
Yeah. How about the IP Helpdesk, Helika? Do you have something similar like that? What are your recommendations? How can you, again, practically help SMEs that now understand the importance of IP, but perhaps still need guidance on how to actually action?
Yes, at China IP SME Helpdesk, we also do have a IP diagnostic toolkit that SMEs can use. So it is pretty much a questionnaire that SMEs can answer to questions to see how prepared they are with regards to IPR knowledge before entering China market. And as Renzo mentioned, that the best advice to give SMEs is to be prepared when coming to China market. Yeah. Now, what SMEs often forget is that IP is territorial.
Yes.
So that means you have to register your IP in China if you want it to be protected in China. Whatever you've registered in Europe is not automatically valid in China. And this is something that SMEs tend to forget.
Yeah.
And so the first thing before coming to China market, even before thinking of coming to China market, register your IP at the China market.
And what would something like that cost? And how would you do that?
Well, the cost really depends on the type of IP at first. For example, when we are talking about patents, there are initial costs like filing fees, but then there will also be annuity payments.
You see, this is what I worry about. I think this discourages companies from doing this because there's so much administration and the costs aren't clear, no?
Well, the cost might appear not clear, but I would encourage SMEs to not really get discouraged by all those administrative hurdles that you have to go through. And actually, at China IP SME Helpdesk, we do have something that we call the IP cost tool. So if you want to know, for example, how much a patent might cost, and what are the expenses that I could expect, then you can simply use our cost tool and to see what are the filing fees, then what are the lawyers' fees, and then how much you expect to pay in annuities. And if you're going for an invention patent, so that would be a patent for 20 years, and you can see exactly how much you're expected to pay within those 20 years and how much you have to pay for your patent in China.
I want to take advantage of this opportunity to create some practical example. Let's say I manufacture cups. Okay, I'm having a nice cup of tea with you right now. I produce these cups. They come from Italy, from that lovely island that produces all these crystal glasses. What would you advise me if I say, hey, I'm coming to China now? Of the three different categories of IP that you mentioned, which ones would I need to look for if I'm a manufacturer of cups and glasses?
Well, you probably did not invent the cup, so patents here would most likely not be important.
Okay.
However, if your cup has a very nice design or, let's say, an innovative shape,
Yes.
then you might want to protect your cup with a design patent.
Okay.
Now, definitely your company has a name.
Mm.
But you might have a famous brand for your cups.
Yeah.
So you definitely want to protect your brand name in China. So that means you have to register your trademark.
Mm.
So trademark is definitely the most important part of IP for any company. May it be a company that also relies on patents or copyrights, but trademark is really the single most important thing. And we see this at the Helpdesk a lot, that a company, a European SME, wants to enter China market, but they have not yet registered the trademark, and maybe they've already made their first sales in China. And now they turn to Helpdesk because they have been told that they are infringing on someone else's trademark in China. And they don't realize what is going on here. It's our trademark. We're not infringing on anyone's trademark. But what has happened is that someone in China has already registered trademark in China, now owns the rights to trademark in China. Because remember, I said IP is territorial, and also China functions under the first to file system. Yes. So that means the first person to file an application for a trademark will be granted that trademark. So now the SME has very few choices. It can try to attack the previous registered trademark. Yes. Or it can try to buy back the trademark. Yeah. That also sometimes happens.
Probably very little they can do because it's first to register, right? I think Apple had this problem with its product in China 6 or 7 years ago as well.
Exactly. There are some options because now the China trademark law has improved to deal with those bad faith. We call those bad faith trademark registrations because, what the Chinese entity wants to get out of it is actually to try to make money by selling that trademark back to the original owner. So now the China trademark law has actually tools to deal with those bad faith trademark registrations. So in case that bad faith is established, there is a chance for the SME to actually get their trademark back. But this definitely involves the legal procedures. You have to go to the court and you have to hire a lawyer. So the expenses will be quite huge for this. So what we definitely recommend is before coming to China market, try to register your brand, your trademark here, because it is very easy to block your sales here if someone has obtained the rights to your trademark and you don't own the rights to your trademark anymore.
Okay, that's very good advice. Thank you. I'm going to move back to Esther here, and you were talking about the benefits of advocacy for SMEs, but is there a role for SMEs, again, in this recommendation part, is there a role that we want to give and recommendation we want to give to SMEs to get involved with advocacy? Can they contribute to that somehow?
Well, absolutely, Adam. And maybe in terms of recommendations, at the risk of sounding repetitive, I will echo what Helika and Renzo have said. You have to be prepared. You have to do your homework. And maybe just to add a bit to the conversation, SMEs that want to go to China or that are already in China need to think of China not necessarily as a single country, right? But as a continent, as the European Chamber President tends to say. China is an extremely dynamic market, as I said. It has a lot of different regions, different nationalities, different smaller provincial markets. And SMEs need to know where it is best to establish themselves, not only for their product, but also in terms of the policy and business environment for them. So just to give you an example, last year the Ministry of Industry and Information Technology published a ranking, actually, of 36 provincial capitals. And this ranking was based on different indicators of business and policy environment. So you had financing, you had IP environment, you had legal environment. And honestly, I mean, when I read it, I was struck by the wide differences that you could find. you will find on the top of the list cities, for instance, I don't know, Shanghai, Shenzhen, Hangzhou, Beijing. And at the bottom, interestingly, cities like Haikou in Hainan or Lhasa or Urumqi. So again, you need to take this into consideration when doing business in China. And I think that's a basic, a fundamental issue you have to look at. And then, of course, you need to utilize all resources available.
Yes.
We're having this conversation here because, again, the EU is providing very good services for SMEs, very good projects that can support
I see that.
Internationalization of SMEs, like the IP SME Helpdesk, the SME Centre, and we're not the only ones, really. And member states as well also provide a lot of support for SMEs in their own countries. So again, this is something you have to look at. And my final point would be, don't forget advocacy. Again, it may not be your first priority, but honestly, together we're stronger. A single SME has limited power in terms of changing outcomes, changing policy, making sure that their issues are heard at the highest levels. But here at the EU SME Centre, and also through national chambers, through the European chambers, we provide a platform for SMEs to come together and to voice their issues, to have the ability to make a change.
So this platform of bringing SMEs together, how do SMEs get involved in it?
Well, first of all, you as an SME, you can participate in working group meetings and seminars that we organize. Both the IP SME Helpdesk and the EU SME Centre operate at the national level.
Yes.
We cooperate with different chambers of commerce in different cities to organize events, to organize information sharing sessions. So again, like you can reach us both offline and online, and that I think is the first step. Establish contact with us.
So you have a mailing list, you have a newsletter, you have a distribution list that people can get on.
Yes, we do, and if you participate in one of our events, in one of our working group meetings, and are interested, we can add you to this mailing list, or you can add yourself to that mailing list by going into the website. Then the next step is and probably what I would say is the more difficult step, considering, again, like, how busy SMEs are. The next step would be actively provide feedback. So, for instance, we are about to start our drafting process of the position paper, the SME position paper. In this process, what we do is we develop key concerns and recommendations from our SMEs, and then we share the draft document with our European SMEs. This is your chance as a small company to contribute, to provide your view, and we are going to include this. And we are going to reflect this in the final version of our position paper, which again, we present both at the technical level and at the highest level to European and Chinese institutional stakeholders. So do not discount the impact that these can have.
Helika, during the break, I was talking to you about a friend of mine. We were having a bit of a chuckle because he was selling snare drums to China, very, very low volume. I didn't really think much of the market, but then things started to develop. And he finally got to a stage where he was doing a reasonable business, only to find out later that his trademark hadn't been registered and his distributor had registered it for him behind his back in the distributor's name. And he said, if you want it, you can pay me €1,000. How often do you see this sort of thing happening? And what would you say to my friend, my distraught friend who's doesn't want to pay €1,000?
Indeed, Adam, I would say that your friend actually got lucky. €1,000 is nothing €1,000 is what SMEs end up spending to register their trademark here in China. So he can actually get away with simply the registration costs and then own his own trademark here in China. However, what we see at the help desk, as you mentioned, it's usually hundreds or let's say tens of thousands of euros that distributors or any other entities that have registered SMEs trademark here in China require those companies to pay. And what we also oftentimes see is that, for example, manufacturers, European SMEs that only manufacture in China and don't even consider China market for selling, they get into situations where someone else registers their trademark here in China, and then those manufacturers, they try to get shipments of their products out of China in order to sell those at the European market. And all of a sudden, they're notified by the customs that their exports have been blocked because of trademark infringement, and they cannot actually export their products back to Europe in order to sell those in Europe. And now they are contacted then by the malicious company that has registered the trademark, and they're asked to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars, or hundreds of thousands of euros to get their shipments freed from the customs and then to buy back their trademark. So those are the issues that we see. In this light, I can say that your friend got lucky and he gets his trademark back, and he should definitely. I mean, in that case, yes, we do know it's unfair, but this happens in China, so he should indeed try to buy back the trademark, take the deal, and own his trademark, register his trademark also now here in China. That is important, to now register your trademark here in China, have the ownership transferred.
Do it early and free yourself from hassles like this years down the road. Okay,
Absolutely.
Great. Well, I think that's it for time today, but I have to admit, it's very impressive what the European Commission and what your organizations are doing here for SMEs in China. I know a lot of other countries look at what the EU is doing with a lot of envy, wishing that they had similar services that they could provide to their SMEs. So I highly recommend echoing what all of you have said about using these services. Again, free services, accessible no matter where you are, and at very different points and stages in your development and your opportunities here with China. And it's certainly a market that we've seen many companies do well in, and they need to certainly look at and evaluate for themselves. So thank you very much to all of our guests. Thank you for our listeners. If you like the podcast, please share it on social media. Thank you, Renzo, Helika, and Esther. I'd like to thank my colleague Gao Ray for the production and work behind the scenes. I'm Adam Dunnett from China Dispatches. Thank you for listening.